Have you ever wondered why the person who prays the most seems to wait the longest for love? You watch friends rush into marriages that crumble within years, while you, still faithful, still seeking God's face, remain single well into your 30s or beyond. And here's what the world won't tell you. That delay isn't punishment. It's preparation for something the hurried will never possess. We're Bible Voice, and we create content that cuts through surface-level faith to help you discern what God is truly doing in the seasons that confuse you most. If this resonates, stay until the end, because what we're about to uncover might completely shift how you see your waiting. There's a quiet ache that comes with watching everyone else pair off while you're still praying for clarity. Family gatherings become interrogations. Church events feel like reminders of what you don't have. And if you're honest, there are nights when you wonder if God has forgotten your longing for companionship. But what if I told you that the very thing you think is holding you back is actually the evidence of something sacred being built inside you? The chosen ones, those set apart for deeper kingdom assignments, often marry late not because they're lacking, but because they're being entrusted with a love that requires a foundation most people never bother to build. This isn't about romanticizing loneliness or pretending the wait doesn't hurt. It's about understanding the spiritual architecture behind why God sometimes keeps his most devoted servants single longer than they expected. And before you dismiss this as another "just wait on God" message, I want you to consider something radical. Your delay is not about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person for a union that will withstand what ordinary marriages cannot. Let's walk through 4 reasons why chosen ones marry late, and why this timeline, though painful, is working in your favor. Reason 1. The refining of, discernment. Most people marry who's available. Chosen ones marry who's assigned. And learning the difference between those two things takes time that cannot be rushed. When you're young, attraction feels like confirmation. Chemistry feels like compatibility. A shared laugh feels like destiny. But God knows that the person who will walk beside you in your calling needs to be discerned, not just desired. Think about Sarah, a woman I know who spent her 20s watching friends marry men who seemed perfect on paper, successful, charming, church-going. But by her early 30s, she'd watched 3 of those marriages unravel because beneath the surface, there was no shared spiritual vision. The men loved God, sure, but they didn't love the cost of following him. When Sarah finally met her husband at 36, she recognized him not because he swept her off her feet, but because she'd spent years learning to hear God's voice above her own loneliness. She'd developed a discernment that couldn't be fooled by good looks or smooth words. Proverbs 4:7 tells us, "Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding." That word understanding in Hebrew is bina, which means the ability to distinguish between things that look similar but lead to different destinations. A chosen one's late marriage often happens because God is teaching you to distinguish between a good person and the right person, between someone who fits your preferences and someone who fits your purpose. That kind of discernment doesn't develop through dating apps and surface conversations. It develops through years of watching, praying, and learning to recognize the voice of the shepherd, even when your heart is screaming something else. The world sees your singleness as a gap to fill. God sees it as a classroom where you're learning to perceive what the spiritually immature will miss entirely. You're not being kept waiting because you're unworthy. You're being kept waiting because the assignment on your life requires a partner who can discern seasons, spiritual warfare, and divine redirection just as clearly as you can. And finding that person means first becoming that person. Reason 2. The dismantling of idolatry. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Many people don't want a spouse. They want a solution. They want someone to fix the loneliness, validate their worth, complete the picture they have of a successful life. And God will not release a person into your life to become your functional savior. He will, however, use the weight to expose every place where you've made marriage itself an idol. I've watched this play out in my own community. A young man named Marcus spent years convinced that marriage would solve his struggle with purpose. He believed that once he had a wife, he'd finally feel like a man, like he was moving forward, like his life had meaning. But every relationship he pursued fell apart, often in painful, confusing ways. It wasn't until he was 34, sitting in a season of deep isolation, that God began to show him the truth. He'd been trying to extract from a human being what only God could provide: identity, worth, direction. 1 John 5:21 ends with a sharp warning. Little children, keep yourselves from idols. And we often think of idols as statues or obvious sins. But an idol is anything you believe you cannot live without, that isn't God. When marriage becomes the thing you think will finally make you whole, God in His mercy will withhold it until you discover that you're already whole in Him. Not because He's cruel, but because releasing you into a marriage while you're still looking to another human for salvation would destroy both you and them. The late marriage of a chosen one often signals that God is doing deep excavation work. He's removing the fantasy version of love you built from movies and romance novels. He's confronting the belief that a ring will heal your childhood wounds or compensate for your insecurities. And yes, this process is painful. It feels like loss. But what's actually happening is that God is making room for a love that's built on communion with Him first, so that when your person finally arrives, you're bringing them wholeness, not a list of unmet needs you expect them to fill. How to discern without becoming judgmental. Before we continue, let me address something critical. As you grow in discernment, there's a dangerous trap waiting. The trap of becoming so spiritually sharp that you become harsh. I've seen singles who've waited so long that they've turned cynical, critiquing everyone they meet with a checklist so rigid that no human being could pass. They call it discernment, but it's actually fear dressed in spiritual language. True discernment doesn't make you cold, it makes you compassionate. It allows you to see people clearly without condemning them for not being your assignment. Romans 12:3 warns us not to think of ourselves more highly than we ought. And that applies to the waiting season too. Just because someone isn't for you doesn't mean they're less than. Just because you've developed patience doesn't mean others who married young made a mistake. Discernment says, I see clearly what God has for me. Judgment says, everyone else got it wrong. Guard your heart here. Let the wait make you wise, not bitter. Let it teach you to celebrate others' joy even when yours is delayed. Because the moment you begin to despise those who married earlier, you've lost the very humility that makes you ready for the blessing you're asking for. Reason 3. The strengthening of solitary communion. God is building something in your alone time that married people often forfeit without realizing it. When you spend your 20s and even your 30s single, when everyone else is consumed with building a home and raising children, you have something rare and precious. Undivided access to God's presence. And the assignments He's preparing you for require a depth of intimacy with Him that simply cannot be cultivated in the noise of early marriage and young family life. Look at the life of Joseph, sold into slavery at 17, imprisoned for years on false charges. He didn't step into his destiny until he was 30. The text doesn't mention a wife until after he's already second in command of Egypt, after the character has been formed, after the trust in God has been tested through isolation. Those years weren't wasted. They were the furnace that forged a man capable of managing a nation's resources and forgiving the brothers who betrayed him. He learned to hear God in a prison cell, and that skill saved a region from starvation. You might not be in a literal prison, but the waiting season often feels like one. While others are posting engagement photos and baby announcements, you're in a quiet, lonely room asking God why your life looks nothing like theirs. And here's what He's doing. He's teaching you to recognize His voice when there's no one else to talk to. He's building a prayer life that doesn't depend on a crisis to activate. He's showing you how to worship when there's no visible breakthrough. 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35 speaks to this directly. Paul writes that an unmarried person is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how they can please the Lord, but a married person is concerned with worldly affairs, how they can please their spouse. He's not saying marriage is wrong. He's saying that singleness offers a unique opportunity for undistracted devotion that has tremendous kingdom value. When God delays your marriage, He's not punishing you. He's utilizing a season that, once it's gone, can never be reclaimed. Reason 4. The preparation for spiritual warfare. Here's the part that makes some uncomfortable, but it must be said. Chosen ones marry late because the partnerships they are being prepared for will face warfare that casual relationships never encounter. When two people come together who are both genuinely called, anointed, and committed to advancing God's kingdom, the enemy takes notice. And if you're not individually fortified before you come together, the marriage becomes the battlefield instead of the base of operations. I know a couple, Daniel and Rebecca, who married in their early 40s. Both had spent nearly 2 decades in ministry. Both had walked through deep personal trials. Both had learned to stand alone in faith when everything around them was shaking. When they finally came together, they didn't spend the first years of marriage figuring out who they were. They came in knowing, and within the first year, they launched a ministry that brought freedom to hundreds. But they also faced attacks, spiritual opposition, financial strain, and personal trials that would have obliterated them if they'd married younger, weaker, less established in their identity. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. A marriage between two chosen ones isn't just a romantic union. It's a strategic alliance in the spirit realm. And God will not release you into that alliance until you've been trained in spiritual warfare as an individual. Until you know how to put on the armor. Until you've learned to stand when everything in you wants to run. Until your faith has been tested enough that when the enemy comes at your marriage, you don't crumble, you fight. The late marriage isn't a sign that you missed your chance. It's a sign that you're being equipped for a partnership that will accomplish things together that neither of you could do alone. And that kind of power couple doesn't happen by accident. It happens when two people have been through the fire separately and come out refined. So, let me bring this full circle. If you're still waiting, still praying, still wondering when your season will change, hear this. Your timeline is not a mistake. The delay you've experienced has been refining your discernment, dismantling your idols, strengthening your communion with God, and preparing you for a level of spiritual partnership that requires maturity most people never develop. This doesn't mean the wait stops hurting. It doesn't mean you won't have moments of doubt or nights of frustration. But it does mean that when your person finally arrives, you won't just be getting a spouse. You'll be stepping into a divine assignment with someone who was worth every year you waited. Someone who sees you, matches you, and walks with you in purpose that transcends romance. The world will call you late, but eternity will call you right on time. If this message met you where you are, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else who's walking this road and needs to know they're not forgotten. Drop a comment and let me know which of these 4 reasons resonated most deeply with you. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Bible Voice so we can continue walking this journey of discernment together. Your wait has meaning. Your story isn't over, and the best chapters are still being written.